Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 2 of the anime series Aria the Scarlet AA, finally officially subbed through Funimation. I guess it's going to take like a day after it's released to get it done, but it's now being officially done, whereas if you saw my episode 1 first impressions video, I was very much dismayed that it took several days after it was released. It was released on a Tuesday. It wasn't until like very late on a Thursday night going into Friday morning, and it was very poorly subbed, at least for that, particular episode. And now we actually have Funimation conducting it, so that's not even an issue anymore. And what's really interesting about that is this episode is very much a contrast. If you saw my episode 1 discussion video, I was talking about the first episode for this, what is, basically a spin-off series from the original Aria the Scarlet Ammo, sort of season 1 proper. Basically the first episode of this season and spin-off story I felt was far superior than almost the entirety of Aria the Scarlet Ammo season 1. There were a lot of elements of it that I could have taken or left, and some standout characters, Reki for the win, give her her own show, and such like that. But I mean, this episode is just bizarre and psychotic and murderous. Yandere through the roof, apparently with, of course, Mamiya Akari's friend Shino, and just yikes. I wasn't expecting that. And the ironic twist is I'm seeing a lot of people hating on this series because they wanted a season 2, a continuation of the story. They're ticked off that Kinji is nowhere to be found, at least outside of cameos. And, the first episode we got a cameo of him and such like that. And for me personally, like I said, coming off the first episode of AA, I was like, hell yes, this actually rocks. This actually is living up to the expectations I had going into season 1, which really kind of faltered and kind of felt like it was all over the place, especially toward the end of it. And now this episode comes along, and the ironic twist is it feels much more befitting of all the things I took issue with in season 1. There was an overemphasis on goofiness and the just yandere thing. I don't know. I couldn't quite get into all of that. I was just sort of watching this episode mouth agape, like surprised throughout the entirety of it how far it was going with this Shino character. And all this is, of course, unfolding with Aria. She has actually submitted the paperwork for Akari to be her amica, but it's not going to be official until she gets her gun back from Aria. And I find that entirely intriguing because she's trying every step of the way. But then you see that Aria actually she's gauged Akari's, prowess, and that she has this, I don't know whether it's like knowledgeable martial arts training where it's something that Akari's conscious of, or if it's something subconscious buried deep down within her that may or may not play into the flashbacks we're seeing. Again, we see flashbacks in this episode during a heated moment where dogs are chasing on her coattails as set on her by Shino. And we see this flashback where there were like these wolves and this town burning down. And I guess, I can only assume that this is like, Akari is a child, or maybe her and an older sister, whatever it is. They're trying to escape the destruction of their hometown. Not entirely sure what it's all going to amount to, but I'm definitely dying and chomping at the bit to find all of that out, what all that has to do with. But as I say, Akari's going to have to live up to the challenge, and she really is not good at doing anything. She doesn't have any special skills, which is sort of a primary aspect of this episode that I love for its resonating and overreaching aspects. The idea that her greatest skill is sewing effectively Aria's, sort of whatever you call it, glider, that kind of thing. She sort of backstitches the entire thing to make it that much stronger. And this actually coincides with the opening episode of season 1. I had been wondering going into this, not having done any digging on it whatsoever. I wanted to be completely surprised going into the series how exactly it was going to play into what we had seen with season 1, how this was going to be a spin-off. Was it going to be a prequel spin-off? Was it going to be building up to the events of season 1? Was it going to exist coinciding with it? Or was it going to take place after season 1? And we have pretty much in this episode it, solidified through Akari's own words that this is taking place during the events of season 1. we hear her boasting to her friends in class, Shino being one of them, that Aria used this particular glider, to save somebody. And that's, of course, Kinji. Anyone who's seen the first episode of season 1 would know that. And we also see Reki toward the end of it. She was involved in that whole sequence toward the end of the first episode of the first season. And again, Reki for the win. Loved that cameo. I want to see more of that chick, man. She needs her own show. But I digress. Effectively, just Yandere over the top with this episode to an almost disconcerting level, with Shino just being murderous and psychotic and obsessive, and just absolutely, you have Akari at the beginning of episode 1. She idolizes Aria. This is why she wanted to become Aria's Amica and all this kind of stuff. She wants to, become her equivalent, not take over her persona. But she wants to be as powerful and as kick-ass as is the reputation of Aria, and live up to sort of impressing her idol, her hero. She wants to impress her hero, whereas Shino's like, if I can't have you, no one can. I'm going to murder you because you won't get away from Aria and all this stuff. And it was just like insane. And then, of course, you have her locking her in sort of the background, it almost looked like one of those garden mazes to a point. The back of Shino's mansion, we see that she's a very posh, very sort of selfish, probably, self-enclosed persona. She's not very much socially, I think she's socially inept is what I'm trying to say. And as we see, not only has she sicked the dogs on her effectively, but she's been wielding this sword around. She starts talking about the samurai culture and aesthetic where they had a short sword and a long sword. And she's like, this is the short sword in this game. Then she pulls out what she calls the laundry pole. And it's like, bitch trying to be Sephiroth up in this house. This humongous sword, which she then starts going after Kari again. And what I really loved, I was half expecting Aria to catch up with these events and intervene and save Akari, in sort of by the skin of her teeth. And that didn't happen. While Aria did show up, she didn't intervene at all. She didn't get involved in any way, shape, or form. It was Akari's own martial arts tactics that Aria had noticed that came into play and, basically put Shino in the water, very literally. And it was drawing me in and forget all the Yandere stuff that had come before. That was all very much psychotic and bizarre, coinciding with all the events going on in sort of the episode proper, between Akari and Aria respectively. But once you had this whole sequence unfolding with Shino, very much trying to kill Akari, seeing Akari rise to that challenge and be sort of, spurred on, sort of championing her, Aria, on the rooftop of this mansion, that point was the pinnacle. That was the awesome sauce of the episode. All to be sort of unwoven again, as I say, next day at school, and Shino's talking about, I'm going to be an Amica too, let's make an Amica group, and all this kind of stuff. And even Aria's like, they made up? Kind of, sort of. It looks like Akari wants to get away from the bitch for a little bit. Pardon the language, but yeah, crazy psycho bitch. And so, I did enjoy the episode, even though a majority of it, anything involving Shino, which took a complete left turn from what I expected that character to be. I thought she was going to be like the confidant of Akari as she's going through this trial and tribulation as put to her by Aria as an Amica of Aria. And here we see that she's a very murderous psycho with the Yandere in full effect. I don't know what else to say about it. I just can't wait for the next episode. I hope we're kind of a little less bizarre and a little less dealing with Shino, because I didn't see that coming one iota. And it's interesting. It's a step down, I think, all told, for a second episode. But I should be used to this because this is a lot of the kind of clunkiness I felt in season 1 of Aria the Scarlet Ammo, proper. And but I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you are a knee-jerk reactionary who just doesn't flat out like the series, not really much to discuss with you. If you're a little more objective and you're giving this series a chance, whether or not you were a fan of this first season, basically, of Aria the Scarlet Ammo, What are your estimations on it? Do you agree with me that the first episode was pretty much gangbusters and a step up from, almost the entirety of season 1, and this episode kind of being a step down from where episode 1 brought us of AA, but at least for me, kind of, still on par with what we had in season 1. So it's like, I don't hate it, but, I just hope it's better next time. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all I would say on this one. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.